Whose time is it to shine? Tom Luginbill joins the show, and a tough break for an LSU running back. It's college football smothered and covered here on Locked On.
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in to the show here on a Thursday. No college games today because the NFL took over Thursday night. Still bitter about that, but what I'm not bitter about is you making this your first listen every single day. Of course, we are available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Just search College Football Smothered and Covered wherever you get your podcasts or on video, and you can find us there. Of course, we're powered by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Okay, it is time to shine. We do this every Thursday, talking about this weekend and who needs to shine, who needs to prove it. What player, what team, what unit will I be watching in terms of making their conference championship game, making the college football playoff, or just making me happy because I'm the judge here, judge, jury, and not an executioner, but you know what I mean. First things first, Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. Everybody's going to be watching the Colorado-Nebraska game because Dion, and Colorado rates better than every other school in college football and most sports in general. Yes, it's true. Not all of us like it, but it's reality. So Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Dion, they're all going to have the spotlight, but so will Dylan Raiola, the true freshman quarterback for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Everybody knows about, most people know about his recruitment. He's a Nebraska legacy, but he went all over, was going to go to Georgia, supposedly got a good NIL deal, decided to go to Nebraska, and is, I think, the biggest recruit Nebraska has had in generations. And he looked like it on Saturday. Now, granted, it was UTEP. We talked a little bit about this with Jake Crane in yesterday's show. But he looked the part. He looked like a guy who was ready to be a starter at the FBS level, ready to be a star at the FBS level. And he's going against a Colorado defense that is an abject disaster. An abject disaster. That team is poorly coached. There's not a lot of talent. There's not a lot to be excited about watching that Colorado defense. So Dylan Raiola, do your thing. Do your thing. You got the spotlight to yourself because you're going to be on the biggest stage in college football, like it or not. That's what playing Colorado does. And you had the chance to build off of a great performance last week. If Dylan Raiola has a great game, he's going to be known as one of the budding superstars. And think about this. I don't think folks who have looked at Nebraska's schedule realize if Dylan Raiola shines and Nebraska wins this weekend against Colorado, and you look at their schedule, they're probably going to be undefeated going into that tough stretch run in mid-October. Where does that put Dylan Raiola? Well, it puts him in the Heisman race. And I know that you kind of look at it might be crazy. No, it does. If he has a big game and continues to win. Because he'll have the spotlight. He'll have earned the spotlight. And he'll probably get a lot of wins. Is he going to win the Heisman? No. But don't be surprised if he shines on Saturday, if he becomes one of the darlings of the college football world and stays there at least for the near future. Second player, time to shine, Nico Iamaleava. And if you're a mainstream media person like I used to be, don't botch his name just for the sake of botching it. You sound like an idiot. It's not that hard to say, Nico Iamaleava. He played a half last week against Chattanooga, and it might have been the best half in Tennessee history. He was unbelievable. Just absolutely dropping dimes all over the place. And if you heard him after the game with Alyssa Lang, you kind of saw what a lot of us heard this summer, is that he's a team first guy. He cares about his team, but more importantly, his teammates care about him. They could be jealous. He's the multi-million-dollar man. He's got them. He's got them on his back, and he's willing and ready to carry them. But he's going up against an NC State defense that's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn salty. That, yes, they played Western Carolina last week, but I think everybody can watch that defense and know, hey, they're pretty darn good. That's kind of a hallmark. It's kind of a staple of a Dave Doeren team. It's a neutral site in Charlotte. Granted, there'll probably be more Tennessee fans there, but it's a perfect opportunity for Nico on a big stage yet again, or for the first time. I mean, bowl game, whatever. But on a big stage, first time is on a big stage as a starter, to announce his presence with authority. Because a lot of folks said, oh, it's Chattanooga, whatever. But, we talk about this a lot, that if you're playing well against air, there's something to take from that. And watching that game against Chattanooga, you saw exactly why people are excited about this guy. Last one in time to shine. Donovan Edwards. Where were you last week? All this hype, video game cover, everybody's talking about Donovan Edwards replacing Blake Corum, when Donovan Edwards has been sort of the 1B for a couple years anyway. Where were you? Michigan's offense needs help, clearly. So going up against this Texas defense, Jake Crane and I talked about this yesterday. You might see a ton of 22 personnel. You might see Michigan try to play keep away. So if Michigan tries to play keep away, how do they do that? 3 yards, 4 yards, a cloud of dust. That's should be Donovan Edwards' jam. So he's got to show me something. He didn't last week. And if Michigan's going to be competitive, then he's going to have to be better, more consistent, and be the every down back that a lot of people think that he could be, and in my opinion, should be. We'll take a break. Coming up, my SiriusXM life partner, Tom Luginbill. You hear Tom and I on Sunday mornings. You're going to hear us throw some ACC talk around coming up after the break. This is College Football Smothered and Covered, and of course, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. The show brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. Why wouldn't you hear us talk a lot about FanDuel? Because FanDuel, they have everything over there. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. The NFL's starting up today. We're excited about the NFL. You can watch every Sunday afternoon out-of-market game with FanDuel with the YouTube TV base plan. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Joined now by my radio compadre. You hear us every morning on College Sports Sunday, Tom Luginbill. You get to babysit me every Sunday morning. Sometimes I'm hungover, sometimes you're hungover, and sometimes both of us are, which makes for some good radio. What's up, man?
Dude, you're on your own now on that part of it because now I got the primetime game on ACC Network every Saturday night. I have to go right back to the hotel, just go to bed.
Look, I tell you what, though, you showed me some video and some pictures last Sunday at the Lowe's Hotel. You might have been double fisting before the bar closed. I'm just saying.
These are all rumors and innuendo.
I've got photographic evidence, so you can't deny it.
Okay.
I've still got photographic evidence. But you're doing the Clemson game. You do the ACC Saturday night game. You have Clemson. I was there last week, and we talked about this a little bit on Sunday, but I can't tell you how many times Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports was next to me in the press box. I can't tell you how many times we were both like, dude, he's there. Dude, throw it. And he just wouldn't do it. How do you fix this?
Well, I don't know if you can coach anticipatory traits and decisiveness. I think there comes a point where you either have that innately or you do not. And I totally agree with you. Listen, I went through and documented. We're going to use this in really the opening segment of our game this coming Saturday night. Everybody's focus is on, the lack of explosive plays and all of this and that. If you go back and you watch the game, it's not so much the lack of explosive plays as it is the plays that are right there in front of him, and he doesn't make them. And I think that's the thing that is so frustrating for me is I documented 3 third downs where on each and every one of them, he has an open target, and I mean a really open target, not semi-covered, an open target that's at or beyond the line to gain, and he won't throw it to him. And I'm really curious to talk with Garrett Riley on Friday, the offensive coordinator, and get his sense of what is Cade not seeing? Why are his eyes not going to that? And maybe get a little bit more insight. But it's frustrating, man. And I think with how good they are on defense, I don't care if you're playing Georgia or West Georgia, you're not going to last that long for the entirety of the game. You know, it was 6-0 at halftime. And Clemson had allowed one explosive play on defense. One. All right. And Georgia couldn't move the football either. They couldn't
Not at all.
extend drives. You look at the first 13 plays of the third quarter, and Clemson gives up 6 plays of 15 yards or more. And I don't know what broke. I don't know why all of a sudden they were exposed in that regard, what shifted or changed at halftime, but that was ultimately the difference of the game. It was the explosive plays in the second half that Clemson gave up. But I'll say this, man, you look at their personnel, Barrett, they are really, really talented on defense.
And that's where I was going to go next, because you can't put your defense out there after 3 plays every single time and expect them to hold. Eventually, the dam's going to break, and that's exactly what happened in the second half. And the score really isn't indicative of how close that game was in the first half, and really just in general because the defensive stats got skewed a little bit. Knowing their defense can play like they do, and after seeing Miami and Georgia Tech twice and all these other teams, can Clemson still not only win the ACC – I mean, obviously, if they win the ACC, they can get to the college football playoff. But can they live like this enough to at least be a threat, not just in the ACC, but moving forward if they do, earn that 3 or 4 spot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think they're talented enough top to bottom. Now, somehow, some way, they're going to have to get their quarterback to take the layups, take the gimmies, every now and then be able to push one downfield and make a play. I actually thought that there were some really bright spots in the run game for Clemson. Last weekend. They gassed Georgia on a couple of shots and they tried to continue to run the ball. So there's clay to mold here, if you will. I've seen NC State now. They were underwhelming on last Thursday night. We saw what happened to Virginia Tech on the road at Vandy. Louisville looked really good, but they're playing obviously, Austin Peay. Pitt looked like they've made the right offseason hires on offense and got the right quarterback in Eli Holstein through the transfer portal because they look like an entirely different offense. But I still think top to bottom, Clemson will go into every game they play with probably the best overall personnel. Does that mean that they win the game? That doesn't guarantee anything. But it means that they're going to be able to be competitive and be in the mix throughout the duration of the season.
Elsewhere in the ACC, you mentioned NC State. The Western Carolina game was, I think, a mess would be an understatement. Defensively they were, fine, but offensively they couldn't get the ball rolling. Concepcion's a great wide receiver. They're playing Tennessee, which if there's a weakness or a question for Tennessee, it is in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest Grayson McCall guy. I think that maybe mentally he's not always where he needs to be. How does NC State spring the upset against Tennessee, knowing that Nico Iamaleava, just absolutely showed out last week?
Well, first off, I don't think that NC State will come out and play the way that they played against Western Carolina. I have a really hard time believing that. They're too old, they're too experienced, they're too well coached. It's a developmental program that has developed great players that have gone on to play in the NFL. They were fortunate to go out and play the way they played last week and come out with a win. So you got a lot of coaching points, a lot of teaching moments, and there were some bright spots. That's the fourth time I've had Grayson McCall as a broadcaster. The other three, obviously, at Coastal Carolina, and that was the worst performance I've seen from him. And not because he wasn't capable, he was just so streaky and up and down and inconsistent. And I don't believe that. I think that really surprised the NC State coaching staff because, by all accounts, he'd had a great camp. Couple of things with them. Number one, they've got a tight end transfer from UConn named Justin Jolie, who's going to be a real handful and problem for people in the ACC. You talked about Casey Concepcion. They bring over Wesley Grimes and Noah Rogers from Ohio State and Wake Forest. And then Jordan Waters, the running back from Duke, is a really good player. Like, the pieces are in place for them to be really, really good. The good news for NC State on defense is they have two potential first-round draft choices at corner. And you better against this offense because they're going to try to stress you downfield. They're going to push the ball vertically, and you better have confidence in your cover people. NC State's got those guys. I think it matters that the game's not in Knoxville. The fact that, it's somewhat neutral having the game in Charlotte. But if NC State goes out and even closely resembles what they looked like last week, then Tennessee's going to blow the doors off of them. But I can't imagine that that's going to happen. And I think, as with Auburn, as with Alabama, as with Texas, Tennessee, a handful of others, the opponent in week one is not truly a challenge. Chattanooga is not challenging Tennessee. I think there will be more of a challenge. So if Tennessee goes into this game thinking that NC State's going to play the way they did against Western Carolina, then Tennessee's going to be in trouble if they take that mindset.
When you look at what happened with Florida State, I don't think anybody thought it was going to be like this. I mean, this was just an abject disaster last Monday, and really against Georgia Tech. I mean, look, DJ was bad, but it was more about the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. DJ was bad. It looked disinterested on Monday night. Still, the defense has issues with basically everything, but you heard "we want Brock, we want Brock, we want Brock" in the first half of that game. At some point, if DJ continues to look just flat out disinterested and can't throw a curveball, can't throw a changeup, just has to have, has to throw his fastball all the time. If at some point, do you make the switch if you're Mike Norvell, and is it sooner rather than later?
Well, I think you have to gauge your locker room, see how those guys are responding to whoever it is that's playing under center. I think that's a component to it. I think you have to gauge DJ Uiagalelei's confidence meter, right? Where is he at? Because he's been so broken down and beaten up and demoralized. And to be honest with you, he's brought a lot of that on himself through poor performance. And that's what comes with playing the position. If they can't move the football effectively, Mike Norvell is going to be left with no choice but to do that. What I think has happened here is they've had so much success in the transfer portal, transforming that program more so than any other program in America. Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, Trey Benson, Jordan Travis. The list goes on and on of guys that came in and were not only as advertised, probably exceeded expectations. And I almost feel like to some degree, ego got involved here a little bit with maybe Mike Norvell and the staff, because I don't know how you could go out and target DJ Uiagalelei and know his history, watch his sample size, and say that's the guy that's going to take us to the next step. He's never been that guy. And so they may have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves thinking, well, we could just go fix this and fix this. We'll put a Band-Aid on this and this and that. And then all of a sudden you take in a few guys and they're not Trey Benson. They're not Keon Coleman, or they're not Braden Fisk. And they may be paying the price for that right now. I'm with you. It's alarming, their inability to protect the passer and to get any push in the run game. But maybe what's even more alarming is their inability to defend a mobile quarterback. They've had no answer for Haynes King. They've had no answer for Tommy Castellanos. And I will stand on this table right here. Those things are all disappointing. But if you have a quarterback, a lot of that stuff gets masked. And I am a firm believer that if you took in the Georgia Tech game and the Boston College game and you switched the quarterbacks to the other team, Florida State's 2-0. So it does come down to the quarterback at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I have a theory on this, and I have not mentioned this to you on College Sports Sunday, mostly because Monday night didn't happen. You and I ripped Florida State and Willie Taggart to shreds on the show. Like, we used to have the Jim Harbaugh segment where we made fun of Jim Harbaugh and then he started winning and proved us wrong. We had the Willie Taggart segment quite often as well. He left that program in ruins. And so I think Mike Norvell, with the advent of the transfer portal, decided, hey, you know what? This is how we're going to rebuild the program. And obviously he did a great job of that. I don't think that he realized that he swung the pendulum too far. Yeah. And that he needs to come back a little bit. And this is sort of a byproduct of that. Am I stupid or not? I mean, I know you think I'm stupid. Am I stupid with that take?
No, I don't think you are. In fact, I think it does need to swing back so that it comes closer to the middle and really blends with what should be the foundation, and that's high school recruiting, right? And, you know, you take Georgia or Alabama, for example. They're a high school recruiting-based program. They might go out and target one guy here, two guys there, but it ain't 10, right? It ain't 15. It ain't 20. It's if they're convinced they have a hole in their roster and there's somebody that can improve them, they'll go pursue that guy. If they're not, they're going to stick with their high school efforts. And I think Florida State probably needs to get back to that a little bit, because and I'm not saying this is going to happen with Florida State. I want to be very clear when I say this, because this could be Florida State. It could be any number of people. When you go out and, for lack of a better phrase, bring in a bunch of mercenaries for hire, and things don't go well, what is their allegiance to the program? What is their devotion to their teammates? Because in all likelihood, they arrived at this point because of name, image, and likeness, not so much because they wanted to win a championship for Florida State or whatever school it may be. And so that stuff can fracture you internally, because there's no investment in the overall well-being of the program. And again, I'm not saying that that's happening right now. I'm just saying it's a very vital component that can become very, very real if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. And, I think when you look at how this program, it's no shortage of talent in Florida, obviously. And so, better than most with your recruiting efforts, that it shouldn't be that hard for Florida State to make that happen. Well, Tom, enjoy this weekend in Clemson. You get to have a pretty easy drive back.
That's right.
From you still have to babysit Wes Durham. And I love Wes. I love Wes.
I know. There's two babysitting gigs I have every weekend during the season.
Yeah, it's true. Within a 12-hour span.
Well, they're going to have to pull me out of the SO club to broadcast the game anyway. So Good luck.
All of the PBRs are going your way. Brown water's after the game, though. That's
right.
That's how you roll. Tom, talk to you Sunday.
See you, buddy.
When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open for your perfect role. And given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit another leading job site. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're not looking in the right place. You're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 80% of small businesses get qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. You get to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, well, of course, they apply. All right. It's just horrible, horrible news out of LSU. I hate to have anybody get injured, but especially players who have fought through trials, tribulations, some of them from their own doing, some of them from a medical perspective. And that's exactly what we got on Tuesday. News broke Wednesday, but it happened on Tuesday that John Emery Jr., the veteran running back for the LSU Tigers, out for the season with an ACL injury. I absolutely hate it for him. I hate it for LSU. I hate it for everybody associated with that program, because this is a guy, highly touted kid, who just never could find a toehold. Tore an ACL before, had some great issues, just never seemed to find his way to the field. And yet we saw him on Sunday night really take over that USC game in the second half and look like the guy that everyone thought and everyone expected him to be. He had 61 yards. He had a long of 39 there, and I think it was the fourth quarter. And it was like, oh, thank God, finally, John Emery is going to be that guy. Finally, he's going to live through and work through and capitalize on that potential. And to have it ripped away like this, just, it's brutal, man. It's absolutely brutal. Think about this. He was on that Joe Burrow 2019 LSU National Championship team. 2019. And he entered the 2020 season was supposed to be the guy. And it just never worked out for him. It's awful. You hate to hear it. And now, moving forward, you've got some issues. Josh Williams, who's been around for a very long time, has never been a number one, but has been a part of a group of four where he kind of was the primary. But LSU kind of always used A, B, C, D. It's like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Josh is obviously going to have a lot put on him. Caleb Jackson as well. But it puts up way more pressure on Kyron Lacey more than anybody else. Because Nussmeier is great. But Kyron Lacey cannot disappear the way he did in the second half against USC. If Kyron Lacey disappears like that, then LSU's in massive trouble. But now this is going to become even more of a pass-heavy offense, because your running back depth is now a little bit more thin. So you're going to have to rely on some of these guys. You're going to have to rely on your receivers. You're going to have to rely on Mason Taylor at tight end. But Kyron Lacey is that number one guy. And so you can't have a situation where you get taken out of the second half. Kyron Lacey has to be a guy who takes over games a lot like Jamar Chase did, Justin Jefferson did, like Neighbors last year. That's what has to happen. But just hate it for John Emery Jr. Hey, thanks very much for making this your number one listen. For your second listen, go check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. He has you covered across the nation just like this show does. He does a great job covering all of college football. And here at the Locked On Network, we love when you are loyal to us. So go check out Locked On College Football. It's part of the LinkedIn College Football Podcast Network. You can find that link right below. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm pointing down. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or wherever, just expand the bottom. You know how podcasts work. You hit expand, and you see all the things, including a link to Locked On College Football. We'll talk to you Friday. We'll make some picks. Until then, have a great Thursday, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.